Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the E.N.G. Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Russell with SurePeople. For those of you just joining the podcast, I'm Christian Gann, the co-founder of E.N.G. Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your software tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. I understand that SurePeople helps organizations unlock the full potential of their workforce through powerful psychometric insights and human-centered technology built around your platform, SurePeople platform, and your Prism psychometric test. SurePeople equips teams and leaders with tools to improve collaboration, communication, and performance in real time. With seamless integrations and intuitive coaching systems, you foster cultures where individuals thrive, leadership is empowered, and organizations operate with greater purpose, clarity, and connection. Can you share more about your business and your role within it?
Thanks, Christian. Appreciate you having me on. As you mentioned, SurePeople is a psychometric assessment platform, but we're very different than the traditional DISC, Myers-Briggs, Hogan's of the world, and really see ourselves as a disruptive company. I came on about a year ago, joined as the CEO of a business that has a great Rolodex of existing customers in big healthcare, professional athletics, and looking to really make a little bit more mainstream accessibility to psychometric assessment vehicles in the capacity of democratizing access to these tools, a key component of our strategy. So one of the broken elements, in our opinion, of traditional psychometric assessments is that they're typically reserved for small privileged groups, like the leadership team at an executive offsite, or a group of employees who've been deemed to be high potential may take a psychometric assessment. So what about everyone else, right? When we're reserving
Mm-hmm.
small privileged groups, we don't have an organizationally wide data set that's really limiting the ROI of the time that's spent taking these assessment vehicles, which are great. I learned more about myself. Learned that I'm a high D when I take the disc, for instance, but that information about myself and others is not available at the moments that matter most in the flow of work. So, with SurePeople, imagine hypothetically that a customer of ours' entire company takes the Prism psychometric self-assessment, creates this amazing data layer about people's preferences, personalities, really how every individual at that company is wired. And then we provide access to those insights via tools embedded in your existing flow of work. So Slack, Microsoft Teams, Zooms. Hypothetically, imagine thinking about whether the wording was right in a Slack message you were about to send your boss and being reminded by the system that your boss is really precise, so you should probably include data. When we understand the people on both sides of communication, we can obviously optimize it. And that's just one of the cool things that we're doing with people intelligence.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Russell. And I think it was a key point you just made in your example that talking to different people, leveraging how people listen and how people communicate is a huge point in not only just one-on-one with your boss so you don't look bad, but also in the business as a whole, right? Communicating at different levels, different tiers, and also through different departments is a huge importance just to make sure that things run, especially in startups and smaller companies, right? And even in larger ones where maybe you don't communicate with that person very often, but you can go look at their results and say, hey, okay, this is how I should communicate with them before you even talk to them, right? So that's huge. And so moving on to my next question, from your perspective, what major trends are you seeing right now in the HR tech and people analytics space?
So I think everyone is trying to develop their organization's kind of formal opinion on AI, right? It's
Hmm.
kind of omnipresent. We've seen this like extreme hockey stick of adoption growth for tools like ChatGPT, which even 6 to 12 months ago, the majority of professional workers were not using on a weekly basis, but how quickly that has changed, right? And when we think about HR technology specifically, there are decisions being made around people, right? Opportunities that are being given to people or withheld from people. And there's a lot of concern, I think, rightfully so, about how AI could impact the selection process when hiring someone new, the promotion process when determining who gets the opportunity to move up an org chart. So I think we're at a moment in time where companies in some cases are paralyzed by, kind of a fear of maybe like negative publicity, litigation, public perception that using AI might introduce to their organization, but also grappling with the massive exponential improvements in productivity that come with embracing AI tools. HR specifically, again, being people centric, is a little bit behind, I would say, from an adoption curve of perspective of effectively employing AI the way engineering and sales as example disciplines are probably a little bit ahead. But AI as a part of every company's HR strategy is something that's being talked about, will be addressed. And when we think about building companies of the future with that in mind, one of the things that we talk about in every weekly exec meeting is how do we create a company that is providing value long term and future proofing itself against being extincted by readily available applications of AI and agents, right?
Of course, of course. And thank you for sharing. I did want to touch a little bit on something you said. I think there's a lot of concerns about AI in the market right now, not just within the HR tech space, but also in a lot of other industries like healthcare or government. And it's really a concern not only because of the usefulness. I think a lot of people see the value, but it's more of a compliance issue, right? In the sense of if we're dealing with personal information or we're dealing with really sensitive information, how are we using our tools that make sure that, like in healthcare, we're HIPAA compliant and maybe we have SOC 2 certifications? How do we make sure that we're not breaking any laws, but also leveraging AI to help us, right? And like you said, in other work or other like departments like sales might be a little bit easier because you're not dealing with sensitive information or something you don't want to get out, right? Or you train AI on the wrong information or the wrong data, and now there's a leak, right? So super important point I think you made there. And moving kind of in this direction to add on, right now in the landscape that you're seeing within the industry, what's making it more challenging or on the flip side, easier to operate in right now?
I think the focus on human capital as a true differentiator related to the success likelihood of any company is maybe more front and center than it's ever been in the past. And that could be due to the fact that, at least in my realm of technology companies, typically like venture, private equity backed, earlier stage companies, right? Um,
Mhm.
we're seeing organizations scale with fewer people. So the effectiveness of those people, the relationships between those people becomes even more important than it was yesterday, right? Like each human can make a bigger impact on an organization and is more important to that organization to optimize when there are fewer of them. And I think what we'll see down the line that the companies of tomorrow in the startup technology space are going to be hitting 100 million, $200 million in revenue with teams of 10, 15, 20 people, which we're already starting to see, right? You used
Mhm.
to have that like typical kind of like proportion of couple hundred employees for each $100 million in revenue. That would be pretty standard. That is no longer the case due to efficiency, productivity improvements that AI is helping to facilitate, right? So I think though that just makes people even more important, right? So the market is certainly listening for and looking to be guided towards tools that allow their people to work better and be even more productive. And that's kind of where we fit into this whole um, paradigm of self awareness, right? And people who know themselves and their teammates better are likely not only to be more comfortable at work and to show up as their best selves, but also to collaborate better and produce better work product, which in essence leads to better effectiveness on the side of the corporate.
Of course, of course. And I think there's a very big point to be made there in the sense that Like I was talking to another person in my network last week on a podcast, and he was talking about how the S&P 500 has changed so much in the past 3 years compared to the past 20 years, right? And if we're shifting that much at a higher scale, can we imagine in the startup space, right? Of how many companies are fluctuating and coming and going and being influencers and not influenced because of the noise of AI, but also because of the leverage that now, if you have the right people and can communicate clearly, like you were saying, you can become $100 million, $200 million company with 15 people, which is in previous years unheard of, right? So thank you for sharing that. And as we specialize in marketing, we'd kind of like to know what it's been like building and retaining a marketing team and even a sales team, especially with the current competitive landscape for talent. I know there's a lot of talent out there right now. How are you sifting through? I know ChatGPT is throwing a lot of issues, especially with resumes out there right now. So how are you guys kind of working with that?
Yeah, so I'm lucky to have a tremendous head of marketing here, a woman by the name of Gargi Patar, who's done a tremendous job with our brand. That's one of our real, major initiatives since my join date has been a bit of a public rebranding of the company. We're trying to make it feel more accessible and personal. So we
Mhm.
did a major website overhaul, and we're really rolling some of that new brand identity into the product from a user experience perspective. We're taking it into account in the roadmap, and we've been exploring much like less traditional avenues of prospect and meeting acquisition. It's, I'm sure, a secret to none of your users that traditional outbound uh, lead generation has become incredibly difficult. Partially due to the amount of spam cannon noise that's been unleashed on decision makers due to AI, right? So
Of
it's
course.
harder to stand out when people are getting thousands of messages as opposed to hundreds. And channels that have worked in the past have not been as effective recently. So we've really, and this is one of the areas I think Gargi has done a tremendous job, leaned into channels like influencer marketing via LinkedIn, things that we're doing via other social media, building brand awareness through content. And we're also seeing, to be honest, a little bit of a shift back towards in person, hitting events, meeting people in person, having that human connection uh, really be front and center at the start of a relationship can certainly help to differentiate. And when it comes to finding great talent, we're lucky to have an awesome team here. We're small but mighty, and I subscribe typically to a philosophy of trying to hire people that I know are great as opposed to I think are great until we get to the point of scale where that's no longer possible. And
Mhm.
then the network that can be created from affiliate groups and membership organizations like Pavilion, which is a tremendous organization for executives to share best practices and open networks to each other when it comes time to hire. That's always better than going in semi-blind with only an interview and a resume being taken into account to make the decision on a person who's going to be, you know, one of a likely smaller team today. That's not to say that we haven't hired people completely outside of our network. We certainly have our social media coordinator is an example of that, who's doing a tremendous job for us as well.
Of course, of course. And I think you're right. I think you hit it spot on. And the current marketing state, not only in software tech, but overall, it's a very sophisticated market, right? It's in a very large maturity stage. And if you're still using outdated marketing and outdated sales tactics, it's not really going to get you a lot of ground. If you're using really bad quote email or not reaching out the right way on LinkedIn or coming with a more of a direct approach rather than value. It's really outdated, right? And I'm glad that you mentioned that you guys have a top marketer on the team. That was super helpful, especially in staying about the outside of the noise right now with a lot of agentic and AI tools. So, um, and with that in mind, what does the current competitive landscape look like right now for sure, people?
We're an interesting, uh, hold on.
You're
Uh,
good. Take your time.
we sit in a very interesting place in the HR technology ecosystem, right? There are a number of kind of like adjacent competitors to us, but none that I would consider to be direct competitors. Obviously, our primary intellectual property sits in the form of the Prism psychometric self-assessment, which I just want to point out is not a test. There are no wrong answers when we take a self-assessment. We're learning about ourselves, not passing or failing, right?
Mhm.
So we compete with the traditional assessments in some respect, but we're much more than that. We also have an AI-powered coach that understands the personality of an individual who's completed the assessment, and those results are then used to inform an AI coach that understands a particular individual's blind spots, for instance, and might be able to help develop them, right? So we
Mhm.
compete with some of the AI coaching tools that are out there, or even human coaching offerings as well. But we feel that our democratized approach to scaling is giving more people access to products like that. And maybe we'll talk a little bit later in this interview about how we're opening that up to even a wider portion of the potential user base.
Of course. That makes a lot of sense. And shifting a little bit, could you tell me what you're responsible for directly? I know we talked about your role within SurePeople and kind of as personal or as unpersonal as you want to get and how your day to day kind of looks.
Yeah, sure. So this is my first full-time CEO job. My career has been spent at least over the last 15 or so years as a head of sales, usually for venture private equity backed growth stage tech companies with a particular focus in HR tech. So I'm very comfortable leading go to market, outbound. But for the first time now, I'm thinking more specifically about finance and fundraising and getting into more of the weeds on the engineering side of the business. So I've certainly been tasked with tackling some tech debt that we have amassed over the years at this company and needed to address. I think we're doing a really solid job of that. We're also thinking, as I mentioned earlier, about continuing to build a brand. I have a really great person focused on that, and just doing the things that we need to do to create a business that will be able to scale. Taking into account the existing landscape of the marketplace. That's, I would say, my primary focus at the moment. And then also thinking about how the roadmap iterates. Because as the CEO of a small company, you're essentially running both product and go to market. Right? And we have a great product person here as well. But at the end of the day, the final decision on product direction also falls with the CEO of a smaller company.
Of course, of course. And that makes a lot of sense. And with those responsibilities and the things that you're focused on right now, are there any financial or performance metrics that matter most? Is it product usage, retention rates, like maybe integration success, or maybe something else entirely?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is not to create a $10 million business. Our goal is actually to change the world and the way that the assessment landscape um, is currently malfunctioning provides a great opportunity for us to disrupt. So we believe that when the product is perfect and the adoption is obvious, given the fact that it's so incredibly valuable, and we'll never attain that perfection, but I think striving, chasing perfection is
Hmm.
obviously important on the product side. Um, Revenue scale will be the obvious byproduct of adoption for us, right? So the metrics that are most important in our boardroom conversations, for instance, are more aligned with how many people have completed the Prism assessment than how many paid customers we have at this moment in time.
Gotcha, gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense. And I know you touched on it a little bit in that answer too, but looking ahead, what are the goals for the next 12 months?
Yeah, so we're launching a really revolutionary new product probably around the beginning of June. It's going to be called SureCoach.ai. I'd urge everyone to keep their eyes open for it. It is going to be, sorry, it is going to be a completely free mini version of the Prism psychometric assessment. So where the full Prism takes about 30 minutes to complete, it's the most robust psychometric self-assessment vehicle available today on the market. The mini Prism takes about 5 minutes and
Wow.
still calls out enough information from an individual to appropriately determine their personality type. So someone completes the mini Prism, they learn which one of our 16 personality archetypes they are. that personalized understanding of the individual is then used to power, again, a free AI driven career coach that's personalized to that individual, understands, for instance, how they like to communicate. Is it precise or is it a little bit more detail oriented? Are they a big picture thinker? Are they more focused on the data? What might some of their strengths and weaknesses be? And it's going to be amazing because we're targeting really professionals, but anyone that might have been in a stressful situation at work and could have used the opinion of a third party that isn't going to judge them for feeling imposter syndrome, for instance, right? This tool will be always on, always available, free access to those who sign up for it. And it's got some really cool viral sharing functionalities built into it, because the innate first reaction of almost everyone that takes Prism as a part of any of our sales cycles or a customer deployment is, holy cow, this is cool. I'm a catalyst. I want to see what my partner is or what my boss is or what my sibling is. They want to share their results and learn the personality archetype of others that they know, right? So we're going to make that very simple. And every time anyone goes through that 5 minute time commitment to learn their personality type, well, they're also going to get access to their own personalized AI career coach, which we're super excited about.
That's awesome. And that's revolutionary, honestly. And I'm probably going to try it when it comes out with my business partner, just so I can see what both of our results are, and see if we could even communicate better. I know that we think we're decent at communicating, but there's always room for improvement, right? So thank you for sharing. That's awesome. And you were saying this is starting to come out hopefully at the beginning of June.
Yeah, it should be live on the market as of June 1st. Go to SureCoach.ai to sign up directly and take the mini assessment and get your AI career coach.
Perfect. Perfect. And I have one last question for you. It's a little bit of a fun one, but a tough one. If you had a magic wand and could solve just one problem within your business, what would that be?
Holy cow. And probably engineering bandwidth, right? Like there are always so many great ideas and things that we want to build, but building things the right way with the right, architectural infrastructure certainly takes time. We have a great engineering org. I wish I could wave that wand and clone them a few times over to be able to move even more quickly to continue to deliver, the types of enlightening products that we're working on building to as many people as possible as soon as possible.
Of course. And that makes a lot of sense. I don't think you're the only one in that boat, especially with companies that have a great product. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great answer. But to wrap up, if people want to connect with you or learn more about what SurePeople is doing, where could they go and how can they connect?
Sure. So our website is simply surepeople.com, spelled as it sounds. You can learn more about our B2B offering there. The SureCoach.ai website will be up soon as well. That's for more information about that individualized AI coach that we're offering. If anyone's interested in seeing a demo of our product to roll out as an assessment at their organizations or people intelligence tool, they can reach out to me directly at Russell with 2 S's and 2 L's at surepeople.com.
Perfect. Perfect. I will leave the links to both the websites, the current one, and then I'll leave a link to the one just in case someone comes to this podcast a little after June 1st and they can come click on it and see what it's all about. And then also I'll leave your email and your LinkedIn if you're okay with that, if people want to connect with you. But I highly recommend you check it out. I think the website was really interesting. I've never seen anything like that. And in our previous conversations, we talked about it. I actually was really excited to have you on just because I haven't heard of anything like that in the space, especially at this level and the technology advancement in it. So if you want to check that, I'll leave the website in the description. But other than that, thank you again, Russell, for your time and insights today. And we'll see you guys on the next podcast.